Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. As we will have more and more participants join us, I think we can just begin. Um, as I can see, there are a lot of repeat attendees. So, thank you all for taking your time to join. And I'm really appreciative of people who are joining from locations where this time zone might not be best suitable. But I'm glad to see you all here. That makes me want to, that makes us appreciate your effort, and that makes us feel appreciated as well. So as some of you might be aware that this is the fourth session in our Adobe certification masterclass series. So this certification session is part of our Adobe Analytics masterclass user group that we have. So we try to do in succession. So we have already done previous sessions on Adobe Analytics Business Practitioner Professional, Adobe Analytics Business, Adobe Analytics Developer Professional, Adobe Customer Journey Analytics Business Practitioner Professional. So all those three sessions are available. And you can check out the recording. I'll just share the links here if you would like. So I would like to start this session now. So this session, we would focus on Adobe Analytics Business Practitioner Expert and a quick introduction about me. So, my name is Isha Gupta. I am joining you from Ireland, which is where I've moved in October 2022. Originally, I'm from India. I am three times Adobe champion, 2023 onwards. I am currently working as associate director in S&P Global Ratings. I have 12 plus years of experience. Overall, I've worked across different companies, different verticals, which has given me good experience that helps me cater to my passion of driving CX strategies. I have a toddler. He's not really a toddler anymore. He's 5 years old. But yes, it is difficult to handle a boy, but it's all worth it. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I have given this QR code here. Um, Next slide, please. Um, Thanks, Mandy. I just saw that Mandy has joined us. So Mandy is another like if you know Adobe, then you would know that she's uh, huge celebrity in our space. So she's multiple Rockstar winner and a lifelong champion. So thanks, Mandy, for joining. And I'm pretty sure that Mandy is here to support with all of your queries. So feel free to input your queries in chat. So uh, in this session, we have got some exclusive rewards. This is the first session where we are giving 33% discount voucher on your next certification to all attendees. So all you have to do is just attend the session, and one important thing is that to be able to receive the voucher, you should be registered on the Adobe certification portal. So the QR code here is for that certification portal. If you're not yet registered, it just take couple of minutes. So you can register with either your personal ID or your professional ID. It's very easy to merge your certifications from your personal to professional later on if you need. So feel free to register, and we would be like all previous sessions, we would be giving away 500% free certification vouchers at the end of the session. So how do you so to enter into the chance to win a certification voucher, you have to attend the session till the end. There will be a survey that I will post towards the end of the session. It is very short survey, it will take less than 1 minute. What we really are trying to understand is that how useful you find this session, and it has and would you like it the feedback that we get through this form helps us in shaping what comes in future sessions. So please take a moment to fill it. I will call it out when the survey has gone live. So once I get that, then we in the end we will use the names of the users who have filled those surveys, and we will select winners live on on the session. So stay till the end and let's find out. And reminding you again that you need to have your ID created on Adobe certification portal to receive your discount vouchers. With that information in the air now, I will pass over to our guest speaker for today, who is my friend and a long time Adobe champion. And if you follow her on LinkedIn, you will see that she has been in this space for a good while, and she has her own newsletter, Decoding Digital, which is very informative. So I welcome Purnima. Purnima, over to you.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Isha. All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are having a good day, and thank you so much for joining the session. Now, before I actually deep dive and help you understand more about the certification exam, it's only right for you to understand who you're talking to. So, this is just a small and a quick introduction about me. Well, I work at Lenovo, where I'm the analytics manager. I live in Gurgaon, Haryana, which is in India. How do I fit here and why am I here to take the certification masterclass? Well, obviously, being Isha's friend has its perk, I'm not going to lie. But other than that, it's also because I've been an Adobe champion for 2 years. So, current year and the previous year. I've been using Adobe Analytics since 2015, as far as memory serves. And I'm also an Adobe certified professional. So, these are the reasons why I was called upon and I felt I could share the knowledge with the group here. I love to give back to the community through the digital newsletter that Isha just mentioned, Decoding Digital, where I not just speak about Adobe and its concepts, but also digital in general. So if you scan the QR code that is there, you can find me on LinkedIn, you can follow my newsletter, but no pressure, only if you find it informative. I also love to mentor people, whether it is to help them go through their resumes or just talk about digital. That's something I'm very passionate about. And I believe analytics in general is something that I really care about. And that is the reason I've stuck in this space for so long. Other interests. Well, I am a huge, huge fan of tennis. And if anyone here is a Novak Djokovic fan, well, you're already very special to me. And if you're not, it's all right. There's a huge debate, but we'll get into that later. I'm also a distinguished Toastmaster, which is so Toastmaster is an organization for public speaking. And apart from analytics, my other interest is public speaking, which I really love. I've always loved debating. I've loved talking, communication. These are, I would like to think, one of my strongest suits. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. And with that, let us start the session. So, the agenda for the session today is going to cover a few things. First would be understanding the benefits of the certification exam. Why would you want to take the exam? You should be knowing why it is useful to you and what exactly is it going to give you. Second are the different types of exam within Adobe Analytics. So when you go to the certification portal, you will be seeing a huge list of applications within the Adobe ecosystem. So it is very important to understand where this business practitioner exam sits in the entire ecosystem and how is it different from the others. The difference between professional and expert level exam, I'll get into that later once we get deeper into the session. Then key details about the exam like normal information, prep, exam guides, etc. So which brings me to the resources and then the mistakes that you should avoid while preparing for the exam. Things that I have learned throughout, not just while preparing for the exam, but also while mentoring people. Bonus tips to ace the exam, something that I felt from my own personal experience that you all can benefit. And then a Q&A section. Well, the Q&A section is not really the last one. You can put your questions in the chat. Anisha and the other amazing Adobe champions and product experts can reply and will respond to you. And last but not the least, obviously, the exciting announcement of the lucky 5 winners who have received the free voucher for the Adobe certification exam. But if you hang on and stay with us till the very end, just like Isha mentioned, all you need to do is fill a survey and get 33% off on your next Adobe certification exam. Trust me, it's a huge deal. I wish I had that. Anyway, so let's start with benefits of being Adobe certified. What does it bring you? So the very first thing is obviously it validates your expertise, but not so there are two aspects to it. the kind of work that you do in your day to day, in your company, you might be just working on Adobe Workspace, you might just be working on the implementation aspect, or maybe only handling data warehouse queries. But when you take the certification exam, it validates your expertise beyond that, and it gives you a whole deeper level, like confidence about the tool, not just one aspect where you work continuously. So obviously the very first thing is validating the expertise beyond day-to-day usage. The second, building credibility with clients and stakeholders. From personal experience, I can tell you that when I started working in Adobe Analytics, I took a couple of months and maybe a year or two to actually really get dirty with the tool and understand everything. But even though I was very good at it, I wasn't taken that seriously until I passed my Adobe certification exam. And this I'm saying from personal experience, because once you have that badge, people know that, all right, she put in the effort, she gave the exam, she actually got the marks required to get the certification. That means she knows what she's doing. So this builds a lot of credibility with clients and stakeholders. That is your second motivation to be certified. Third would be improving cross product understanding within Adobe ecosystem. When I was preparing for the examination, I was heavily working on Adobe Workspace and maybe a little bit of data warehouse, classification, data feeds. These were areas that I was not even touching because my job just didn't require it. But while I was, preparing for the certification exam, there were just so many aspects I learned along with it. Not that I hadn't learned that, I did that in theory. But the thing is, it pushes you to go back to your company data, reach out to the members of your, let's say, implementation team or target team, ask them questions that you actually didn't even know that you needed to know. So it really improves your cross product understanding of the Adobe ecosystem. What is Audience Manager? What is Target? How does that fit in with analytics? When should I use data warehouse, data feeds, etc.? Next, demonstrating commitment to professional growth. Obviously, if you want to show people that you're serious about your future, what do? You either give an engineering exam or you give an exam to become a lawyer, then you go and do MBA. There are so many degrees we take, but why do we do that? We do that because we want to show people that we are serious about our professional growth, and here's the proof of it. Adobe certification is exactly like that, just that it is something that gives you a badge in the Adobe Analytics space. And last but not the least, it identifies knowledge gaps you didn't even notice in your day to day work. Coming back to my previous point, so there were areas I wasn't even looking into. But when I started learning concepts within the exam and about the exam, there were so many questions that came in my mind that I went back and solved on my own. And I realized that there were a few things that I wasn't really doing correctly. Well, I wouldn't say correctly, but maybe I wasn't using the most optimal solution to deal with the business problem. So when you learn the certification exam and give it time, you go through concepts that you didn't even know you needed to know. So these are the different ways in which Adobe certification exam really benefits you. Now let's start to understand the exam a bit. So if you go to the certification portal that Isha just mentioned, right? So here's the link. Obviously, once the deck is shared, you all can do that and go to that link. Or a previous link was also shared when we were sharing the screen and Isha was talking about it. So when you go to that page, you will see this. So on the left hand side, if you look closely, I have filtered only Adobe Analytics, but you have plethora of applications within the Adobe system that you can access. Well, I'm interested in Adobe Analytics, so that's what I choose. And once you do that, you will see that you have a list of exams here. So what are these exams and where does the business practitioner exactly sit amongst them? Now, look at the screen carefully. So one, two, three. Now, these three exams, all of it has the word developer in it. So what is the developer exam? So the first one is nothing but developer professional. Second is developer expert. And the third is nothing, it's just in the Japanese language. So that's also something that you'll see. Now, developer exam is something that technical people take in your company. What do I mean by technical people? I mean people who are implementing Adobe Analytics in the scenes, like behind the scenes. They are the ones who are setting up the tags. They are the ones who are giving us the the variable mapping files, the solution design reference, if you might want to call it that. So these are the people who take the developer exam to establish their expertise in the implementation area. And here again, you have two levels, professional and expert. I'll cover that a little bit in detail in the next slide. Now, if you look at the screen again, 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are, so the red smileys that you see on the screen are your business practitioner exams, out of which one of them is data analyst. So data analyst professional exam is, you can say, the simplest exam of all. It only tests your expertise in areas where just analysis is concerned, nothing else. It just tests how your mind responds to analysis. If you're given a business problem, do you have the capability to actually analyze it and understand what to do with it next? So that is the simplest one, probably. The next is the business practitioner professional, a session that we've already had earlier in this masterclass series. And then comes your business practitioner expert. So this is the session that we are having today. And obviously, one of them again is the Japanese version. This also now obviously has two aspects to it, professional and expert. Again, I'll cover that in the next slide in detail. The last one is your architect exam. Now, this exam is the one that requires the most experience and mastery in Adobe, to give this exam, because you need a minimum of 3 to 4 experience. You need to be able to design architecture. You need to understand data layer specifications very clearly. And for this exam, as you can see on the left-hand side, there's only one level, which is the master. There is no professional or expert. There's only master. So my intention behind walking you guys through this interface and showing you this is so that when you decide to give the exam, you understand why I would choose business professional, or why would I choose business practitioner expert, and why I would either choose developer or architect. So this is why you should understand the various types of exam within Adobe Analytics. Now, assuming I did a great job at explaining you that, let's understand professional versus expert. Now, the two exam level categories that we see everywhere when we are taking the certification exams. Now, the table is very self-explanatory, but let me walk you through it one by one. Let's talk about what is Adobe checking. In the professional exam, so think of professional exam as something that requires 0 to, sort of 12 months experience. So 0 isn't ideal, obviously. I would say a minimum of 3 to 6 months. That's always recommended. But that is like a beginner level exam, you could say. An expert takes it to the next level. So it requires a minimum of 1 to 3 years of experience. So let's understand the aspects. What is Adobe checking? In professional, they're just trying to understand that, do you get the platform? Are you familiar with the features of the platform? Do you know about it? But in expert, they check, can you make the right business decisions using the platform? So the questions are not just about the features, but how you use them to solve business problems. Then question styles. You'll have direct knowledge-based questions in the professional exam. There won't be any complicated questions or any, hidden things that may confuse you. They're pretty straightforward. Like I said, they're just testing your knowledge. But when we come to expert, it is knowledge, direct knowledge-based questions, of course, plus complex scenario-based questions. They can ask you advanced segmentation questions. They can give you a scenario that this is what the stakeholder needs. Out of these 4 things, which one would you choose? So that is the kind of questions that may come. Business context, basic use cases in professional, but real world business situations in expert. Answering options. Now, in professional, when you have your options, usually there's a one obvious, direct, and correct answer. You will really not get confused by the options. However, in expert level, obviously there is a correct answer, but more than one option might seem correct. Because here, the fight is not that the answer is correct or not. It's actually the answer which is most suitable. I will come to this point when I will show you some sample questions and examples of what I mean by that. But just in a short version, choosing the correct option in expert is not as straightforward as you might think. Expected thinking pattern. Well, a professional level exam would expect you to say, I know this feature. But expert level exam would want you to say, I know which feature solves this problem the best, right? And last but not the least, your recommended hands on requirement. Well, professional level exam, like they say, 0 to 12 months. So it's really recommended, but not really mandatory. But expert level, absolutely important. Like from personal experience and by talking to everyone I've ever spoken to has taken this exam, I can say that you do need a little practice and you have to get your hands dirty with the tool. Otherwise, how will you answer the scenario based questions? So that is essentially what is the difference between professional and an expert level exam, which applies to the architect exam as well and the business practitioner as well. Okay, now let's go to key details about the test. Now look at this Venn diagram. The left circle represents the technical knowledge that you might possess. And by technical knowledge, I mean, all right, you might know about EVARs and props, you know about processing rules, you know how to implement, you know, attribution models. So you have all of this knowledge sitting in your head. Now, the right circle represents the business understanding. So, while you might not have all the technical knowledge, you understand how to weave the story together or how to understand the customer journey. You know that which conversions are important to your business and what are the goals of those conversions. You get your stakeholder requirements clearly because you know what matters to business the most. But Adobe Business Practitioner Expert Exam does not only test your technical knowledge or your business understanding alone, it tests the sweet spot in between, both. So it tests your ability to create advanced segments, for example, to solve a business problem or selecting the right attribution based on a business objective that's been given to you or knowing which feature to use the best. So, this is what the business practitioner exam is all about in a nutshell. Coming to some details about it. Now, this left side is nothing but a snapshot from the exam interface. The exam detail page. So, when you go to the certification catalog and select the exam of your choice, there is a learn more button. When you click on it, you land on this page. And if you see, there are different tabs over here, right? Key information, exam details, how to study for the exam, how to manage it, what to do after the exam, and how to renew certification. So, all the details are mentioned here. They have been also mentioned in previous sessions, but I'll at least just walk you through this key information here. So, this is the exam ID. Of course, level, like I said, recommended 1 to 3 years of experience within the tool to be able to give this exam. Well, cost is $225 global, but for India, it's $150. And a little tip here, many people don't give their exam, or they think they might probably give it later because of the exam fee. But this is one of this is something that I think I've done, is that you can pitch to your employer and tell them that since I'm already working in Adobe, I want to strengthen my expertise in this area. I want to prove to you that I have really, learned everything I could and give this exam. So your employer can actually be convinced to reimburse this to you once you pass the exam. But obviously, you have to pass the exam for that. So I think one of the major reasons people don't give this exam is because they think it's too costly. But if you pitch to your employer, if they're ready to, support you in this, it's a great way to actually give the exam without burning a hole in your pocket. Another way is actually attending the Adobe Summit, where you can give any exam you want for free. So it is like no cap on the number of exams, but yes, you can only give one exam, one type of exam once. So you fail, you pass, whatever it is, that's just it. And then you can move on to the next exam. But it's all free of cost, apart from the Adobe Summit fee ticket. So yeah, there's that. All right. Then the languages in which they are available, English, Japanese, as we already saw in the previous snapshot that I showed. It's online proctored exam. Your passing score is just 30 out of 50. So you have the liberty of getting 20 questions wrong. I would say this is more than fair. And time limit is 120 minutes. So this is a key detail about the exam. Think of it as, a GRE or a GMAT exam that you give online. Obviously, they are longer, but how they are proctored online, monitored. This is how it's a serious exam that you give. It's not something that is not monitored, right? So that's how you give this exam. Now, what you need to also understand is that what is the weightage of different areas in this exam. So if you just look at this pyramid here, this inverted pyramid, reporting and dashboarding takes up 30% of this exam. Now, what is reporting and dashboarding? Again, this is a snapshot from this tab here that says exam details. So that gives you an entire, so this is how it breaks down all the topics within the subtopics to tell you what you should focus on more. So talking about reporting and dashboarding for projects, that has 30% weightage, right? That will give you these kind of questions like advantages of using a reporting tool based on a given scenario. So you'll be given a question, you'll be asked which of these is the best to use. Should I use data warehouse, data feeds, workspace, etc.? Then comparing a fallout or a flow visualization and appropriate variable types for reporting, applying the process of scheduling reports, data warehouse, alerts, visualization, dimensions. So, any of the aspects that you use in your day to day reporting and dashboarding, that comes under this huge chunk, the 30% section. Next, we move on to business analysis, the first one, which forms 26%. This is where many people lose points because they think that this is an exam where they are just testing you for feature knowledge. Here, they'll give you some real scenario questions, business questions, and they will ask you to make sense out of it. They'll give you a hypothesis and tell you, give them the most optimal solution here, right? They'll give you a conversion funnel and they'll ask you questions related to that. They'll probably give you questions and ask you to investigate what the outlier is. So these are scenario based questions that require you to put on your thinking hat, analyze, and then answer the question. Very important. Next comes your segmentation and calculated metrics. Trust me, segmentation looks very easy, but it is not that simple. You need to understand the scope, hit, visit, visitor, at what level I should apply, which container, how will it change the data, what difference will it make? Calculated metrics. Now, calculated metrics is not just simple plus, minus, division, and multiplication. Our amazing Mandy George has written an entire playbook on calculated metrics. Granted that the questions are not going to be very tough also, but it'll definitely test your deep knowledge about segmentation and calculated metrics in workspace. So you should be thorough with all the available functions and how to use them properly. Then comes your second last aspect, which is general tool knowledge and troubleshooting. Now, these are just simple ones. There is an error, there is a problem. How would you troubleshoot it? What would you do next? There are options, choose the most appropriate one. Or, for example, how to bring in data in and out of Adobe Analytics. So, again, this is something that we don't probably think about in our day to day work. We take out the data, but do we really think about getting in the data? Right? We don't, because we think of ourselves as analysts, not the team that is concerned with all this, which is where the business practitioner expert exam is a little different. And last but not the least are simple admin questions. So your marketing channel processing rules, maybe they'll talk about data governance, virtual report suites. But bear in mind, this 12% and 10%, the 22% really make up for a huge chunk of topics that analysts do not really think about when they work or they do their jobs, because they don't think about virtual report suites. They just see, oh, that's a virtual report suite I have to use for my report. Great, I'll just go ahead and do it. But do they really know what it is, how it is made, what is the technicality behind it? So this 12 and 10% also make a huge chunk of topics that analysts generally don't care about, but they should. So in short, I'll just repeat again: reporting, dashboarding, and business analysis, what we do the most, that obviously forms the huge chunk of it. But after that comes the tricky part: segments, calculated metrics, tool knowledge, and administration questions. So this is how the business practitioner expert exam is spread. Now let us talk about resources. Now I will tell you one thing: when you ask this question to anybody, right, different maybe Adobe champions or your colleagues or people who have passed multiple certification exams, they all have pretty much the same common answers. go to the documentation, maybe just go online, read a little bit, or go to the certification catalog. There are some videos to help you out, and you can get it. But I'll tell you, all I did was look at these four things and I was absolutely set. Anybody who tells you Adobe Analytics documentation, they're absolutely right, because that is the holy grail, right? That is the document that is everything. So Adobe, I have also given the link of all the resources. So when you click on that link, it is beautifully segmented into different sections. Getting started, talk about analytics, workspace, different panels, different visualizations. And within each of these links, there are also very important callouts, which are put in rectangular boxes that says note. That is again very important because these are important disclaimers which we might miss, but they're very important to understand. So Adobe Analytics document, I mean, today if I have a question, okay, for example, I want to understand what is the difference between next or previous panel versus a flow report. I'll just Google it. I'll open the documentation link. I'll read everything about it. And that's it. The documentation has clear examples. They have links to videos, which brings me to my other resource point as well, your Adobe YouTube channel. Well, that was my third point, but that's again something that is linked everywhere in the documentation. So the first point where you start is your documentation, no doubt. Second, actually, since I've already mentioned the Adobe YouTube videos, so these documentation have links to these videos. You can also go to the Adobe YouTube channel and see the playlist. So over there, you don't just see, so suppose I have a question about cohort analysis. I'll simply write cohort analysis Adobe YouTube channel. I'll get a beautiful video that Adobe product experts, the ones who have actually made it, they've seen it, they're breathing it. They are the ones who explain it with crystal clear examples, simple examples, which are not complicated to understand. That itself does half the job. And what is not solved by documentation or your YouTube videos, it is definitely and will definitely be solved by Experience League community. What is that now? It is a centralized hub for learning. So when you go to this link that I've given in this deck, right, it'll take you to a site where there are different tabs, communities, blogs, places where you can put questions, you can ask questions. So today, if I have a very complicated scenario, let's say a very complicated segment, I don't know what to do about it, and nobody in my firm, seems to know about it. I can obviously, by hiding the important data, just put that snapshot in the Experience League community question section and just leave it and wait for one of the Adobe champions or product experts or leaders to come and answer that question. I cannot tell you the amazing quality of questions that goes here. Like this is not just helpful for certification. Like, forget that. This makes you an expert in every true sense. I think I became, I got into this Adobe champion direction, or I became confident that I was worthy of being a champion by learning so much through these question and answers. If you haven't looked into it, the first thing you should do after this session, I would say, is do this. Last but not the least, hands-on practice on the tool. Like we covered in the previous slide, this is not like a professional exam where it is only recommended, but it is essential. You have to get your hands dirty. You need to, sort of take the admin access, go to classification rule builder, understand how variables are classified, understand what are the processing rules that are set up in the backend. So you need to get your hands dirty with the tool. You need to schedule reports. You need to make mistakes, learn from them, understand. So hands-on practice is again the best way to learn. So just summarizing it once again: documentation, your Experience League Q&A, Adobe YouTube playlist, not just concept videos but playlist, where you also get video links to user group discussions, where again, people put questions and experts answer. So that, and last but not the least, the hands-on practice on the tool. These are the essential resources that can help you sail through any exam. And trust me, it'll make you a much, much better analyst than what you are today. Okay, now, while I take a moment, let's talk about some of the exam preparation mistakes. Many of these I have made myself, so I know. But a lot of these has also come to me, when I mentor people, they come to me and they tell me all of these things. So it really got me thinking. And, the number one preparation mistake, which we spoke about previously, is studying based on your job. When I was thinking about taking the certification exam, I was very confident. I hadn't read the entire blueprint. I did not have a masterclass session like this. I just read something online and I was like, and this was back in 2019, I think, right? So I was like, yeah, it'll be easy. Like, I work in Adobe Day in India. What can they ask? I took the practice test and I failed miserably. There were some questions I did not even, I was like, is this a part of Adobe? Like, do I really need to know all this? What are these questions? Why are they asking me implementation questions? So, the biggest exam mistake you can do is think that you will only get questions related to the tool you're working in. Meaning, if you're working heavily in Adobe Workspace, doesn't mean your questions are only going to come from that. Questions will also come from data warehouse. They'll also come from data feeds. They might also come from report builder. Well, not anymore, maybe, but I'm just giving you an example. They can also come, like there is a section in your segment sharing that says publish to experience cloud. Do you know why you need to check that? Do you know why do like you don't have to check that? Very nitty gritty, small questions that maybe you have looked at but not paid attention to can be asked. So the first thing that I'll tell you, never only think that the questions here will come from the tool or the solution that you're working in, right? So you need to know a little bit of implementation, very basic level. This is not an architect exam. Probably you'll just get one or two questions from implementation maximum. However, knowing how variables are captured, how the tags are set, how that is then used by the analyst, what are the admin controls, what a person can do, what is classification, what is saint, all these are important because they help you understand what your backend team is doing, and that will help you answer the business scenario questions. So, yeah, exam preparation mistake one, never only study for the job role that you're doing, look at the exam blueprint, which I just took you through. That's how you learn. Second, ignoring Adobe's best practice thinking. Now, what is that? I was giving you an example of options that may look confusing in an expert exam and not that straightforward. Now, look at this question, for example. A team of 10 stakeholders need access to a weekly KPI report. They need access to a report, an Adobe report. So, among these options that are given to you, which is the best solution? Would you want the analyst to export the PDF every week manually and then send it to them? It's an option. Stakeholders build their own reports every week. Sure, if you want to get fired, that's an option as well. Third, use schedule dashboards in Adobe Workspace. Maybe. Last, export data to spreadsheets and email manually. So technically, if you look at it, none of them are wrong. They all are options that work because the end goal is to send your stakeholders the reports. But is which is the most optimal solution? So optimal obviously is using schedule dashboards because it is automated. You don't have to manually do anything there. Of course, I have used a very simple example here for the audience because those who don't have much knowledge, I don't want to give you all complicated questions, right? But this is just to give you an idea that there might be options that are all technically correct, but you have to think from Adobe's best practice perspective. Is this one of the best practice? Is an automated approach better than manual? Of course it is. So that's what you choose. Okay. Next is not focusing on Adobe's language inside the questions when you're practicing. Well, this is sort of a hack, but I wouldn't say that this should be like you shouldn't take it as the last word. There might be a question that's using more than two or three of these terms. Always read the questions carefully, but there are some clues and hints that are always given that will help you understand which visualization or which path they're talking about. For example, if they say across multiple visits, clearly we know that persistence is needed. We're talking about evars. We are talking about visitors, right? We are not talking about a single session or a hit. We are talking across multiple hits. So we are talking about one complete visitor container journey or persistence, which means we're talking about evars. Entire customer journey is again visitor level logic. Drop off between steps. Now, which visualization gives me drop offs? Fallout analysis, correct? Returning behavior over time, that's cohort. But again, maybe your question is just, using this phrase and not even giving cohort as an example. But what I'm trying to say is that when you look at these terms or these Adobe languages, they should ignite that bulb in your mind that says, oh, all right. So when they're talking about the frequency of returning, we know it's cohort. So let's look at what the question is actually asking about cohort. Next, path users followed. Well, that's flow visualization clearly. So look out for Adobe's language when you're giving practice tests or when you're looking at scenario based questions. Take a moment and think about these hidden phrases that I used. Last but not the least, focusing too much on documentation without scenario solving. You can read as much you want in the documentation. Like I said, it's the Bible, it's the Holy Grail, it's everything. But unless and until you have scenarios to practice, you can never do anything. One thing that really helped me here, what I did, I read a lot of blogs on Adobe, not just Adobe, analytics in general. If you look and read at some of the great articles that Adam Greco wrote in the past, Eric Matisoff keeps writing, Mandy George, Jennifer Dungan, Isha, many people, if you just go to LinkedIn, if you just Google Adobe champions or experience league leaders, just these keywords, and you just read their articles, they will give you plenty of examples, plenty of clean, amazing examples that you would have never thought of. What I used to do is go back, use my company data to replicate some of those. Meaning, so let's say today, if Adam Greco gave an example of understanding how many of the users who came to page A, then after a few days went to page B, but ended up purchasing on day 15, how many of those users actually never came back to the site again? He's made this complicated statement and he has shown me the entire use case to do that. I will go and apply the same logic at Lenovo. So just instead of the product that he has mentioned, I'll use my own products, which are laptops, workstation, ThinkStations, whatever. So you can take these sophisticated use cases that you read online and try to replicate. When you see errors in your data, when you see data not matching, Google, look for answers, go to Experience Leak, ask those questions that this is the kind of scenario I was trying to solve, but I did not get the answer. That is how you learn. That is how you practice scenario based questions. So it is very important that you don't just read documentation, but also practice interesting and important questions. And I gave my personal example of reading blogs and replicating. You can just ask anybody in your company who's great with Adobe to give you, some of the questions. Or you can follow some of the articles that you see online, on LinkedIn, anywhere. Knowledge is free. You can get it from anywhere. Anyway, so these were the exam preparation mistakes, apart from the very obvious ones that I think people talk about all the time, that I wanted to share with you all. Now, I will pass it on to Isha to talk about her favorite segment of the session.
It's really the participants' favorite segment. But yes, I really
Actually, yeah.
do enjoy the giving away. I mean, it's always nice. So I've already pasted the link in chat. Feel free to take a moment, and you can also scan this QR code. So it wouldn't take long, but as I always say that this feedback really helps us in planning the next sessions and also lets us know what you like about this session, what you don't like about this session. So feel free to just honestly respond to it. We will use the names here at the end of the session to draw 5 lucky winners. So if you like, I'll just share the link again so everyone has it. I'm looking forward to your responses. Back to you, Purnima.
Thank you. All right. Now, while you all are busy doing that, I'll just share maybe some of, just three, four bonus tips, maybe. Watch out for intent words in the question in an exam, right? So let's look at this example. A retail company wants to understand which marketing channel originally brought visitors to the website, even if the purchase happened 2 weeks later through a different campaign. The business wants to measure the channel responsible for the initial customer acquisition. Then you have your different models placed in front of you: last touch, linear, participation, or first touch. Now, many a times candidates just jump and they're like, oh, okay, they are talking about purchase that happened later, 2 weeks later. It has to be the last purchase, right? So the last touch is probably the correct answer. But the question is clearly asking that the retail company wants to understand the channel that originally brought visitors, right? Or even the last line, initial customer acquisition. That is obviously nothing but the first touch attribution. So that's one thing. Always read the question carefully. Second could be a sequence and scope trap. When you're dealing with segment questions, there is always this risk of not reading the question properly and not understanding whether you need to use a segment option that has hit, visit, or visitor scope. Take a look at this example. A subscription company wants to identify users who have viewed a pricing page during one visit, returned in a later session within the same month, and then completed a subscription purchase. So the analyst now wants to create an audience of these users. Now, the key to understand is the hidden phrase that you can see in this question here is that the person returned in a later session, did not return later in the day, but another session, which means we're talking about visitors across different sessions that have happened. So we are going to here create a visitor level sequential segment. So try to understand the sequence, the scope. There might also be an option that says create a visitor segment tracking the pricing page followed by purchase. Another could be tracking the pricing page followed by maybe some other page. So here you need to read the question carefully to understand that they are talking about pricing, then purchase. There is no other page in between. So the sequence should be clear. What they're asking should be clear. Read the questions carefully. That's the tip. Next, question dumps. Okay, now this is one of my favorite tips to give you because I have had many of my so many people came, asking me questions about certifications initially, and a lot of them told me that Purnima, I took this, question dump I found online, but I don't know, the questions are weird. We didn't see those kind of questions in the real exam. That is because you are taking an outdated version of some of the questions that were compiled long, long ago and that are still floating in the market. Okay. If you just follow the resources I've given you, which I've told you right now, the four important resources, literally there's nothing in the question dumps that like go around in the market that can give you any extra information. Also, personally, when I was taking my certification exam for the first time in 2019, I would say 2018 or 19, I also refer to one of the question dumps, which is why I know some of the solutions are wrong. They are plain blank wrong, and they don't even explain you. So if they mark a question correct, right, they won't even explain why it is correct. Some of them do, some of they don't, and the questions are wrong. And at least I found in a lot of cases, which I then flagged to a lot of Adobe experts, and it turned out to be wrong. So please beware of question dumps. Only follow. I would say if you really want a proper question dump, go to Experience League Q&A. No better question dump than that. One important thing which I forgot, you go to your Experience League Q&A, there are many answers given to a particular question, maybe most of the time. So Adobe actually verifies the correct answer and they, like put a tick mark saying this answer is marked correct. So more often than not, so that answer can be either given by any normal person and it is correct, or it is more often than not, it's an Adobe product expert or an Adobe champion or some sort of leader. So that should be a question dump really. And last, again, I don't want to repeat this too much. When I was talking about getting your hands dirty with the tool, you might also get some questions that are specifically talking about tool interface. Look at this question, for example. When you're creating an alert in Adobe Analytics, which of the following options can an analyst configure as part of the alert setup workflow? The priority level, trigger frequency, historical data processing, or expiration setting. Now, if I don't know the alert, how does it look like what are the options given? If I'm not familiar with the layout, how would I know what the correct answer is. It might, it may as well be the first one, priority level. But well, that's not true. The second one is the correct answer, right? So you need to be familiar with the interface, the drop downs, the options when you're setting alerts, when you're looking at anomalies, the different panels, contribution IQ, contribution analysis, attribution IQ. Be familiar with these things so that you know if a question is asked, it's right mapped in your mind. Well, that's it from my end, folks. These were my important tips. This is what I've personally gone through, and I thought of covering and helping out those who haven't given the examination before, or maybe who want to retake it again. But more than happy to take your questions now. I'll stop sharing my screen and check out if there are any questions that have to be answered. But yeah, Isha, are there any questions?
Yep. So, okay, so someone is asking how to get information about upcoming sessions. So Mandy has already replied to that, and yes, please join the Analytics Masterclass group. So you would be informed about the upcoming sessions. There is a question, will there be a session around MCP and Adobe Analytics and best practices? Um, it is a great idea indeed, Mandy, for a user group session. Uh, I have just started exploring it because my organization only allows Copilot, not any other like Claude or ChatGPT. So, and by the way, for those of you who are still using Copilot, uh, although the documentation is not yet updated, but you can connect your Adobe Analytics through MCP to Copilot now. Just use OAuth with dynamic authentication and you should be good to go. So it would make up a good user group session, but I think we can just, figure out the best way to use it after connecting, and then we can definitely schedule a session based on that. Um, so Purnima, maybe you can take this one. Do we have any hands-on experience sessions happening, like implementation hands-on or something similar?
Well, at least the ones that I know are all, done independently by people, like courses that you pay for. But I think this is something that can be arranged. We do a lot of user group sessions. So what happens in those sessions is that people submit questions and we answer them. So if you want a hands-on implementation experience, right? Obviously, we can give answer to questions there. We cannot demonstrate the entire implementation structure there. However, this is a very good use case. Maybe I can go back and discuss with the team and we can have a session like how we are having the masterclass series, right? We can probably have a dummy website or show you guys how implementation is done from scratch. But again, this is something that requires going back, talking to the team, also setting up a website that we can take up as an example, how to set up the tags and everything. So we'll get back to you on that. I think that's something, Isha, maybe we can, take back to the team and talk about.
Yep. And just one request on the form fill, please. Uh, I think it's only fair that you fill it only once, because so we do remove the duplicates, like we use tools to remove it. So it's fair, right? Fair to everyone to just fill the form once. So it would be great if we have that practice. So there is one more question. I registered from my personal email but submitted the survey with my company email. Will that be a problem due to different emails? No, not at all, because we have your survey name here in the form, so that's not a problem. There is another question, and Mandy, I've just enabled you as well in case you'd like to take any question. So somebody has asked, Dinesh is asking, will Adobe Analytics be sunset in the future, given that many users are migrating to Adobe Experience Platform and Customer Journey Analytics? So what are your views on it, Purnima and Mandy?
Yeah, I mean, personally, attending the summit, talking to so many people, I don't think it is getting sunset in any way. See, at least this is what I think, and obviously Mandy can speak about it in more detail. But CJA and analytics, right? They have different use cases. I mean, yes, they are part of the same thing. They are very similar, but we need to understand one is dealing with tags on the website, other is built on data already stored in AP. Then, when you want to look at the like the comprehensive user journey, that's when you turn to CJ. According to me, I don't see this issue at all. I think if somebody has a question here, why should I take Adobe Analytics certification and not CJ? Well, I would say CJ is an extension. It's a level above, right? So you need to understand analytics first, which is the base of everything. I don't think it is going to go away. We are repeatedly and all the time seeing new product features being added. So according to me, it's not going to go for a long time. I don't even know if it's going to go. I don't think so, but maybe Mandy can speak about that. But we're
Yeah.
safe.
So, this is a rumor that has been going around the community for a few years now. And for a while, there were a lot of sales teams that were telling their customers they had to move to CJA. They wouldn't let them renew AA. AA was being sunset, all of these things. And the product team that works on Adobe Analytics was not aware that the sales teams were doing this. So the Adobe Champions brought this up to the product team about a year and a half ago. And the product team was completely shocked that this was happening because they are not planning on sunsetting Adobe Analytics in the near future. Not to say it might never happen, it might happen one day down the road, but as of right now, the product teams do not have any plans of sunsetting Adobe Analytics. And they've been working hard to combat these rumors that are still going around the community. So, stuff like bringing Journey Canvas to Adobe Analytics, enhancing some of the features in analytics. The updates to segments that are coming next month are being done in CJA and analytics. So the product team is now working hard to make sure that they're adding features to Adobe Analytics, because for a while, the lack of new features coming in was also part of what fueled these rumors. So the Adobe team is working hard to try and quash these rumors, because as of right now, there is no plan to sunset Adobe Analytics. It is still worth learning analytics. It's still worth getting certified in it. Whether you choose to get certified in Adobe Analytics or CJA depends completely on what your company uses, or if you're job hunting, what the type of companies you're applying to use. So there's a lot of factors that can influence which one you go for certification for. But as of right now, there's no plans to sunset it.
Yeah, I mean, these rumors have reached my company as well. People were asking me that, Purnima, we have to learn CJA now because Adobe Analytics is going to go away. I was like, what? Who told you that? So, yeah, it's a very common thing now.
We it's just 2 minutes remaining. We do have more questions. Um, Maybe we can take just one more. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Ashna is asking that AI is booming. Will this have impact on digital analytics world? If yes, how and what can be done to survive to later stages with a niche skill set?
Okay, so I mean, I just want to share my perspective here. This is just one of the other things. AI is coming, it's going to take our jobs, it's going to do everything. Well, it is most definitely not. I saw a question put in the chat, while I was talking about how AI answers Adobe Analytics questions. And Mandy was quick to respond that AI definitely does not understand Adobe Analytics properly. So you should never, rely on that. Having said that, look, that is an ongoing thing, right? AI is not something that it is affecting everything, but positive also, negative also. In terms of positive, for example, in CJA, right, we have got data insights agent. That is nothing but AI integrated, right? What is it doing? It is answering generic questions. I feel that it cannot be replaced right now. You don't have anything to worry here, actually, because either AI is going to assist to make your life easy, right? Or it won't really do much, because at the end of the day, the kind of analysis, insights, and recommendations